right, let's turn our attention to the next story now. The Economic Community of West African State ECOWAS Court on October the 4th ordered the federal government to release former National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki.
Dasuki is facing trial for misappropriation of more than $15 billion fund meant for the purchase of the arms and other equipment to fight Boko Haram insurgents.
Now, the federal government, while explaining why ex-NSA has not been released, despite the ECOWAS judgment, said that he has to study it before taking any decision. Now, let's take this report on one of Dasuki's appearance in court and reasons why he's still in custody.
The former National Security Advisor came in early and sat confidently in the courtroom long before the day's session began. And when the court eventually started sitting, the prosecution lawyer got the court to accept that the charge was appropriately filed. In the one-count charge read before the court, Dasuki is accused of illegal possession of firearms without a license. This was the alleged outcome of a raid on his residences in Abuja and Sokoto, where a cache of arms was recovered. Dasuki pleaded not guilty to the charge. This prompted his lawyer to move for his bail. The court then granted the bail application on the lenient ground of personal recognizance. But Dasuki is to deposit his travel documents with the court.
Sir, do you think there is any substance in the charge?
I cannot say until the prosecution brings the evidence and we see it.
According to lawyers, the penalty for illegal possession of arms is a life sentence. The case has been adjourned till the 26th and the 27th of October for hearing. Sifon Essien, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, we are on to discuss this issue right now. We have a lawyer in the studio, Ayodele Osho, to join us in discussing this. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure being here.
Now, the issue of Dasuki and the federal government has been on for quite some time. We've all been, and I know you've been following this issue. After the judgment of the ECOWAS court, what really came to your mind when the federal government is not adhering to the judgment or pronouncement of the ECOWAS court?
Okay, well, as a student of international law, my first impression was that, look, we are signatories to the ECOWAS treaty, just as we are also signatories to several other international treaties.
Yes.
For example, if you look at the case of Bakassi, though very painful, we obeyed the International Court of Law, the International Court of Justice.
Yes.
Now, on Dasuki case, I see no reason why Dasuki shouldn't be released. But there's a caveat. Okay. The court did not order that his trial should not continue. Moreover, as a lawyer, I know that bail does not mean you are innocent. When the court grants you bail, it's just only saying that, look, you have a case to answer, but you can come from home to answer that case. So, being a signatory to that treaty, ECOWAS treaty.
The revised
the revised treaty. Though there's also a point I need to note that some people have been mentioning. Okay. If you look at Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution that's amended, it says that, only treaties that had been, incorporated into a law through the National Assembly, are treaties enforceable in Nigeria. Yeah. You understand? Yes. That is the argument on the other side.
Yes.
But look, in ECOWAS, we are the big brother. At least we are the giant of West Africa. If you are no longer the giant of Africa, you understand? So, and if you look at the history of the ECOWAS court itself, the protocol was signed in 1991. Then 2001, the court started to function. But as at that time, individuals could not access the court based on Article 9. 3 at that time. Yeah. Individuals couldn't, go to the court except through their nations. By 2005, individuals are now allowed to approach that court. You understand? So, in my humble opinion, I'm a lawyer. They say that the law is an ass, but the law is not a silly ass.
And part of the treaty also said that the ruling of the court is binding on the countries who are members. So that's another lacuna to what perhaps we'll take a look at that sometime. But can we go into the judgment and the pronouncement of the ECOWAS court before we look at the enforceability of that? One of the issues that the court raised was the issue of the search warrant presented to all perhaps not even presented to Dasuki before the raid was carried out in his house. And according to the judgment, what the security operatives did negates what the Section 28 of the Police Act says when it comes to issuers of warrant. Ideally, that it's meant for a superior police officer to apply for the search warrant, then go through the Criminal Justice Act where you have the 143, where you have to go to the court and get all that. Can you?
I just say that the law is an aspect, it's not a silly act. In Nigerian jurisprudence, if you obtain evidence, any form of evidence, even illegally, provided that evidence is relevant, you understand? The attitude of our courts over the years is that they will not throw out that evidence. If you look at the American jurisprudence, it's clearly different. Look at O.J. Simpson's case. The way the evidence, was handled was sufficient enough for the criminal court to acquit him. Now the civil court, he lost virtually everything. Now the ECOWAS court actually was interpreting the judgment of the Nigerian court that gave Dasuki bail. You see, as far as I'm concerned, we have overblown this issue. Nigeria is too powerful. You have the DSS, you have all these people. You grant this man bail. The case against him continues. You understand? That case continues. So I think I've managed to clarify that question of yours.
Yeah.
Within our own jurisprudence,
yes,
the way you obtain evidence, you understand, does not really tamper, you understand, with the admissibility of that evidence. You
According
understand?
to the court,
you could get maybe damages for that, but this is a criminal prosecution. The ammunition and arms found on him. From what I heard from a retired military officer, that arm can, can be used to do a lot of harm. You understand? To whosoever. So they have a legitimate case against Dasuki. But you see, in law, procedure is virtually everything. What is the process?
Exactly.
Even God himself, before he judged Adam and Eve, he gave them fair hearing.
And that's the point.
Adam, where are thou? The all-knowing God. Yeah. That is fair hearing. That is process. You understand? So this government should be mindful of following the rule of law and following due process. Because due process brought this government into power.
Does what the ECOWAS court said about the search warrant, does it resonate with what just happened a few days ago, where houses of judges were raided? The question is, who obtained the search warrant for such raids? It is meant to be the police, not the DSS, according to the Police Act, Section 28.
But other lawyers have mentioned the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which gives even the DSSS and all security agencies, to carry out, something like this. But on this very issue,
yes,
I am totally and absolutely disappointed. People are saying that the judges don't have immunity. My argument is that they also have dignity. You understand? If you consider that these people have dignity, that they have families, why must you do this in the middle of the night? You understand? They are mere suspects.
All right, we'll come to that's our topic for next time. Okay. But let's come back to our issue in here. Now, the ECOWAS court, when a pronouncement or a judgment is carried out at the level of ECOWAS, how enforceable it is at the local, at the domestic level of the country?
Okay, it's tantamount to a foreign judgment. It's the judgment of an international tribunal. They're supposed to issue a writ of execution, that will be sent to the Attorney General, to the Secretary of the Federation of Nigeria. And like I said, this is not the first time an international body has ruled against Nigeria. And if you could also recall the case of the Zango Kataf, where a tribunal was set up during Babangida's time, over the Civil Disturbances Tribunal in Zango Kataf. The tribunal itself consisted of 5 men, in a matter that actually has ethno-religious coloration. 4 of them were Muslims. One was a Christian, Graham Douglas, who resigned. And that tribunal convicted General Zamani Lekot and co. But the CRP, went to to, I think, this same ECOWAS court at that time in Banjul. And that court freed them. And Babangida, with all his powers as military head of state, allowed them to go. They were not killed. You understand? So there are precedents. If you could have obeyed the Bakassi judgment, you understand? And moreover, you know, the ECOWAS tribunal, you know, by virtue of section 4G, you know, one of its aims really is to promote, you know, recognize and protect fundamental human rights based on the African Charter on Humans and People's Rights that we as a country are signatories to. And moreover, anytime lawyers go to court, we want to enforce fundamental human rights. After citing the regular provisions in the Constitution of Nigeria, we also add this Charter on fundamental and human rights. So my conclusion is that let this man be released. You understand? But the law is not a silly ass. When you release it, you could also, I also read that they are trying to merge the charges because the cases are between two different courts. You could merge those charges, you know, and bring in fresh charges. Or you continue the trial. The trial has nothing to do with bail. You understand?
Okay, my producer is trying to tell me something. I didn't get that, but can we just a bit more on the judgment? You're talking about the fundamental human rights, the African Charter, and of course Article 9 of the International Order on Civil and Political Rights. These are issues of human rights and liberties. Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution is also very clear about the liberty of a human being, a Nigerian for that matter, and for him to have been kept that long in the custody, in DSS detention.
You see, ordinarily, even the courts keep you in the prison. You understand? So DSS detention center is not a regular place to detain people. You understand? All these things came up during the time of the military. You know that people like Chief Gani Fire, of blessed memory, you know, always there's issues like this. Or they should take him to the prison. You understand? But as it is, there was a judgment granted November 4 last year. This coming disobeyed the court, you know, the judgment of the court. You know, that was why this guy could go to the ECOWAS court. So the government itself must learn how to obey the rule of law. If they say that change begins with us, then the change also should begin with the government.
I was going to ask you. Now, there are still, in some quarters, there's still argument that there's the likelihood of Sambo Dasuki jumping bail, and that is one of the reasons why he's being kept. Now, how does that affect the straightforwardness of this case, if I have to put it that way? Because the issue of jumping bail is also there. It's also a clause in the whole process.
You see, this man was granted bail by a competent court in Nigeria. And of course, in granting of bail, the issue of jumping bail is considered. There are several issues that are considered. One, is it possible that the accused person will tamper with the evidence? You know, the possibility of him jumping bail. Those are basically the two, and the nature of the offense. How grievous is the offense? You see, seriously speaking, this offense is a grievous one in the sense that if you look at what this man did, you know, money is meant for the protection of Nigerians, you know, was diverted, and several lives have been lost. Millions have been displaced. Even a friend of mine was displaced. They had to come to Lagos from Adamawa State. He's a pastor, you know. They had to get schools for his children and all that. So it's a grievous offense. It's a grievous offense. Okay. But immediately the court of law has granted bail to a person. You know, the government ought to obey, you know, that judgment. And now, we are not even talking about a local court. We are talking about an international court, you know. But like I've said, the law, you know, is not a silly ass. There's a way, you know, that this issue can be resolved further. It depends on the prosecution and the Ministry of Justice, how they handle it. Grant this man bail, let him come out. You know, you have DSS, you have security operations, you could tail him. You could monitor him. You could put him under surveillance. And we need to actually, you know, upgrade our laws and our, you know, prosecutorial system in Nigeria. Take that guy in South Africa, that athlete, that killed his
Oscar
girlfriend.
Pistorius.
Oscar Pistorius.
You know, there's like something like an handcuff, like something that they can put on your leg, so that wherever you go,
Monitor.
It's
everywhere.
They can get a monitor for him. The fact that you allow him to go home does not really mean anything substantial, provided that the case against him is watertight. And I feel they have a case against this man, but they're modding it up by making the issue of bail, an issue. Now, supposing we also have specialized courts for corruption, the matter of Dasuki could be handled every day. He goes to court every day. There are several charges. He keeps going to court every day. So he's on bail. Let him sleep on his bed. Stay with his family.
And there are allegations that this is a personal vendetta, really, because Yoguda, the former finance minister of state, the former governor of, I think, Sokoto State now, Bafarawa, both of them were arraigned by the EFCC on 22 count charges or so, and the amount of money between both of them is about 19.4 billion, which is also huge. But they were granted bail. So you ask, what the count between these two men who were granted bail and the count between Sambo Dasuki?
Yeah, but the issue of finding arms in their possession was that was not.
That was in there, but so some people will say this is perhaps a personal vendetta.
You see, Nigeria as a country, we are still evolving. You and I know that this has happened here, of people in power, trying to take a pound of flesh from people that had previously offended them. The possibility of this being a vendetta is there. But don't let's also forget that the security operatives, they may just want to please the president, because you know that the acting head of EFCC is a Magu man. He's trying everything to become substantive head.
And couldn't evidence be planted in someone's house? There could be a possibility of such evidence. And don't forget that the former Dasuki is a military man. So talking about arms, this men we just mentioned, Bafarawa, they are civilians. Yoguda is a civilian. So this is an ex-military man. I'm just thinking aloud.
You're absolutely right. But you see, like I said, I have a brother-in-law who retired from the Air Force, a senior officer at the Air Force. When he described that particular weapon to me, I was a little bit scared. It's not just the ordinary, kind of weapon. It's very, very expensive, and it could be used, according to him. I've not seen, the weapon. Like it could be used to even carry out a coup or something like that. That was what he told me. But that has nothing to do with the bail that the man has been given. You see, we have three arms of government: executive, legislature, and the judiciary, and there must be a minimal independence. If the judiciary had acted, the executive is bound to respect the decision of the judiciary. And if you look at the country, the legislature, because they are very powerful, they can stall the budget, and they did it. They can hold the executive to ransom. But the judiciary, can they do anything to the executive? Even the money spent to the judiciary, the executive arm hardly gives it to them. You understand? So it's very sad. That's why you see the NBA, they are very, very angry with the issue of the judges. That their privacy was invaded in the middle of the night. They are very angry. Because if you even look at corruption in this country, in my own humble opinion, the least corrupt arm of government, to me, remains the judiciary.
In comparative terms?
Yeah, to the two other arms.
Okay.
The funds available to the two arms is stupendous. And you are talking about Dasuki. He was a member of the executive. Billions. But you look at the judiciary, how much do you even appropriate to the judiciary? So I don't want to go to that issue.
All right, but still coming back to the jumping of bail issue, let's create a scenario, for instance. If Dasuki is released on the ground of, okay, let us obey the court order, and he jumps bail, what kind of scenario will play out after that?
In granting of bail, there are always conditions precedent. You can ask that an emir,
surety,
be the surety.
Yes.
You can ask for sureties. People with properties. you know, ex-governors.
In any case, he met the bail condition.
Yes, of the society.
Yes.
You know, so there's no excuse at all. If the court had granted him bail, it is the duty of the executive to obey the court, except they want to go back to the days of the judiciary, or, you know, what we call executive lawlessness. You understand? We didn't start all these things. When they say there should be 3 arms of government, will Obama have done this? Let's be factual. You understand? So, Dasuki ought to be released on bail.
Okay, so some people have argued the principle of exhaustion when it comes to ECOWAS and the exhaustion of the local laws, that perhaps Dasuki didn't exhaust the local laws before.
No.
Okay.
The ECOWAS treaty,
Yeah.
you know, does not apply the principle of exhaustion. They don't apply it. You can go to ECOWAS, whether or not you have exhausted the local means. That's it. So it is not applicable. Let them go through the treaty. It is there.
Okay. The appearance of the federal government, of course, during this ECOWAS
they've
court,
submitted.
they
We have
submitted
ourselves.
so that means perhaps compelled to obey
the principle of pacta sunt servanda. You know, agreements are binding between parties. You know, international law is very sweet. You understand? It's very, very interesting. You know, pacta sunt servanda. You have submitted part of your sovereignty to an international body. You see, it's not as if you don't have anything to gain. I used to go to Ghana often. You know, now, you are a Nigerian businessman. You do business in Ghana, you did a business in Ghana, somebody cheats you in Ghana. You can go to this ECOWAS court and you get judgment. You understand? We virtually control the economy of West Africa. So there's also something for us to gain by obeying this law and by making sure that the ECOWAS court work. You understand? So let us look at the bigger picture. Since we have invested so much, go to Ghana, that GT Bank, this Eco Bank thing is in Lome. You know, many Nigerians are doing business. Incidentally, I have a friend, I'm sorry, it's late. He did business in Benin, but he's not well educated. And he stopped contacting me. He was duped. And that eventually led to his death. But he could have gone to this ECOWAS court. They'll fish out that person. You understand? But there's also a caveat. Any agreement that you sign with any of those people, you have to put that clause there, giving the, you know, jurisdiction to the ECOWAS court, that the ECOWAS court should have jurisdiction.
All right, but in this case, now that the ECOWAS court, anybody can go to the ECOWAS court. If it comes up with any pronouncement or any judgment,
exhausting the local means.
Can you appeal against it?
No, it is final. You see, the thing is very simple. You know, it is contract.
According to the treaty.
According to the treaty.
It's
if
final.
you have signed it, you have signed. You know, you are bound by that treaty.
Yes.
Even God himself is bound by his word. God, if God keeps his own word, then men should also learn to keep their word. You understand? Because you are not better than your word. Anything that you put to pen, you know, and you sign, that is you. You know, even locally, I give you money or you give me money, we sign a contract, and I go to court, it's enforceable. So that is the same thing with this ECOWAS thing.
So all African countries are waiting to see what Nigeria will do in this case.
Not only all African countries, the entire world is waiting.
Okay.
Is waiting.
Okay. Ayodele Osho, thank you very much for coming on the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
All right.